This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. We're continuing now with our live coverage of the GeekWire Summit here in Seattle, Washington. One major player, to say the least, in Seattle, of course, is Microsoft. Joining us now, Brad Smith, Microsoft president, and still with me, Ed Lazowska, professor at the University of Washington. Brad, great to have you here.
Thank you.
You are the chief legal officer at Microsoft. You came out stronger than any tech company on DACA, and you have on some of the president's policies saying, if you come after our people, we will support them, we will pay their way. Why?
DACA is an issue that we believe is important for the country and important for our business. As an industry, we critically depend on having the best and brightest, and many of the best and brightest are among these 800,000 people who are registered under DACA. And what we said was, if the government seeks to deport our employees, any of the 44 Microsoft employees who are DACA registrants, we're not going to sit on our hands and just watch. We will pay for them to have legal counsel. We'll file a brief as an amicus. We'll seek to intervene in court. We will be by their side. We want our employees to know that we have their back.
Look, Microsoft has a history of challenging the administration where you believe it's warranted. What are your main concerns with the Trump administration?
Well, the truth is we have a history of working with and challenging basically every administration. We sued the executive branch 4 times when President Obama was heading it during 2017. In part, we're continuing some of the debates that started in the last administration around national security and privacy, the protection of customers. But certainly immigration is a new and bigger and more challenging issue this year. We stepped forward in the wake of the travel ban. We've stepped forward again in the context of DACA. We believe we need an immigration system that's enforced. It needs to be balanced, but we need to recognize that as a country, we absolutely benefit. All of us in this country. It doesn't matter who we are, where we live, or what we do. We all benefit when some of the best and brightest people in the world come and work by our side.
Are you worried about retaliation from the federal government or any sort of blowback? I mean, have they come to you and said, what are you doing?
Well, the good news from our perspective is if we're principled, we explain things clearly, we never make things personal. We stood up strongly for DACA. And I went to a Virginia school with Ivanka Trump to stand up for computer science. Our view is simple. We will partner wherever we can, and we'll stand apart whenever we should.
Ed, what are your thoughts?
I have nothing to add. Brad said it perfectly. This is a really important issue, and Microsoft and Brad are extremely principled, and you see it in all their actions.
So, we were talking about fake news earlier in the show, Facebook, Google, Twitter being called before Congress about these paid for by Russia ads. Have you been looking at Microsoft, at whether Russia had any involvement, did the same thing on any of Microsoft's platforms?
We are looking.
Yeah.
We're looking now. We've been looking the last few days. We haven't found anything yet. I think we actually need to think about 2 things. One is what happened in 2016. How can we learn from it? It doesn't matter whether you're Twitter, Facebook, or anybody else. The more we learn, the better we will be. But the question I believe we need to really focus on as a tech sector and a country is not what happened in 2016. How do we prepare for 2018? How do we prepare around the world? There will be a new prime minister elected or one re-elected in Canada in 2019. There will be a presidential race here in the United States in 2020. Let's assume that people are unfortunately going to get more sophisticated in trying to abuse these social media platforms. They're going to get more sophisticated in these cyber attacks on political candidates. How do we get better as a tech sector? How do we work more closely with the government? How do we ask the governments of the world, of the democratic countries of the world, to use their voice together to say, this is an attack on democracy and it needs to stop?
Do you think, Ed, that we can trust companies like Microsoft to self-police, to take on these issues?
Brad is the lawyer. I think we're going to need some congressional action here.
And I would agree with that. We need to accept once again that as an industry, we have a very high responsibility. We might even have the first responsibility. But it would be a great mistake to think that these fundamental, frankly, illegal acts under international law are something that the tech sector can defeat by itself. It would be like looking out in the streets and seeing people looting and just asking the store owners to put better locks on their stores. We need the governments of the world to rally. This is an attack on democracy, on the democratic infrastructure of our country. the government needs to come together, and the governments of the world need to come together.
Look, Ed suggested earlier that perhaps these tech companies were willfully ignorant in this regard. Do you think so?
I don't think so. I actually don't. I mean, it's the truth is these platforms are large. There are so many people using them. So many different kinds of ads are being purchased that I don't think that it occurred to anybody in the tech sector or anybody in government or anybody in the media last year to ask, are there people from a foreign government buying ads? If it didn't occur to anybody at Bloomberg, I'll bet it didn't occur to us either.
Well, they do say that they started looking into it in June, which was several months before the election. But, you know, they didn't understand, obviously, at that point, the scale. At least that's what they said.
It's a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack. Because if you look at all the ads that get purchased on all of the social media sites, it's quite a big haystack. And of course, you're going to get better at finding needles once you figure out what they look like, where to look for them. And I think we're starting as an industry to discern that. And I'll be the first to keep saying, and we need to do more, we need to get better, we need to look ahead because the attacks are going to get more sophisticated. And yet I'll also say, let's not assume that government should do nothing here.
Europe is looking at greater regulation. It could be coming in the United States. Are you concerned about more regulation coming to tech companies? Are you bracing yourself?
I worry less about more regulation and worry more about less thoughtful regulation.
Okay.
I think that there is a place in the world for good regulation. The whole industry is extraordinarily focused on May 25th, 2018. That's the date next year in Europe when the so-called General Data Protection Regulation takes effect. We'll have much stronger privacy protection. I think that's good for people around the world. Anytime it's good for people around the world, it's not bad for tech. It gives us more legal clarity. If we can get good regulations, we'll figure out how to manage them.
Ed, I know you have a question.
I was going to turn us to Seattle for a minute.
Yes.
Be a little parochial.
Yes.
You know, when I moved here, Microsoft was 12 people in Albuquerque. There wasn't a lot of technology here. Times have changed. Baidu yesterday became the 100th company headquartered elsewhere to open an engineering center in the Seattle area in Bellevue. Baidu has 2 ex-Microsofties in leading positions. You've obviously played a role in encouraging to be here. Talk about co-opetition.
Well, I think Seattle is sort of, as we like to joke, the cloud capital of the world. It's definitely cloudy in the weather, but it really, between Amazon and Microsoft and all of these other companies, you're going to find an incredibly fervent engineering environment with lots of creativity. And I think we all benefit as this community grows in the right sort of ways. And as you mentioned, Ed, yeah, I was happy to encourage the folks at Baidu. We have a great relationship with them at Microsoft that in part is based on personal relationships and in part goes beyond that. And I think that as the world comes to Seattle, we will have new opportunities to hopefully play a leadership role in the world and create new benefits for the people who grew up here, too.
And yet Amazon is your biggest rival, so to speak, and especially in the cloud, of all places.
Well, and that's great. I mean, we are in an incredibly competitive industry.
Yep.
And the truth is, we have some of the best competitors in the world. I mean, if you want to look at competitors that are doing great work, all you got to do is look at Amazon and Google and Facebook and Apple. But we also work with each other, apropos your point about co-opetition. We need to collaborate in addressing problems like cybersecurity attacks and the like. And at the end of the day, if more people have confidence in the cloud, if we can move the frontier of artificial intelligence forward, this is a big world. There's room for all of us to be successful.
Last question. You may disagree with the administration on a number of social issues, but on tax reform, you may be more in line. What are your thoughts on progressive tax reform?
Well, I think we need tax reform. We've needed tax reform for a couple of decades now. It's really overdue. Perhaps as much as anything, as an international company, we want to see a so-called territorial system, which is what the rest of the world has. Let's get rid of the system we have today that creates these incentives for us and others to keep profits offshore. Let's figure out how to get money back in the United States. Let's put it to work here in the United States. And let's bring our tax system into the 21st century.
All right, Brad Smith, President of Microsoft, Chief Legal Officer, Ed Lazowska, University of Washington Computer Science Professor. Thank you both for having us here in your cloudy city.
Thank you.